Well, we'd like to welcome a man who really understands EV charging and where that's going. Matt Teske, founder and CEO of ChargeWay, which is all about understanding EV charging and making it easy. Easy as 1, 2, 3, right, Matt? It's great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you both. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back, Matt. It's so nice to see you again. And listen, you pretty much have your fingers on the pulse when it comes to everything that has to do with EVs and charging EVs. So what's new? What's the latest? What can you tell us?
Well, it's an ever-changing landscape. So I think one of the things we're really starting to see now as it relates to news is there's more rollout of public fast charging stations through the NEVI fund. So we're seeing more stations that are being deployed through the NEVI dollars, which is great. So the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Fund. So that's, again, we've got to see that pattern continue, and it's for all 50 states. And so state to state, we'll see that roll out obviously more quickly than others for those who have filed and gotten their funding. But it's happening, which is awesome. And even announcements, even such as today, the network ChargePoint announced that they have a new way of adapting their connector options at their stations that they're calling, I think it's the Optic connector, that's allowing them to actually adjust and allow for different types of connectors at a single station. So we're seeing how the industry is, adapting to what's happening as it relates to, making sure they can accommodate all vehicles at every station. It's good. That's going to require navigating those options, and that's a big part of what obviously ChargeWay is there for drivers. But there's, again, every day there's news, and more often than not, it's positive. We're moving in the right direction.
Beautiful. Now, I had the pleasure to chat with you at Electrify Expo, and we talked a lot about this ever-changing charging universe. One thing you really wanted to hit home was that you wanted to make it simple. You wanted to dumb it down for everyone, which I love. In our last episode, we interviewed Ivan Drury. He is the Director of Insights for Edmunds. Ivan lives in Waikiki on Oahu, and he really brought us up to date with the problems that Hawaii is facing and still having with charging stations. And you were just mentioning more charging stations in all 50 states. Well, that's exactly what is happening in Hawaii. What is going on there?
Well, I think as again, geographically, we're seeing how different states are both applying for the NEVI dollars and how they're rolling out their infrastructure. So that's one thing. And just in general, lifestyle and living situations as it relates to different geographic areas, that will also dictate how we see the rollout occur for charging. On an island setting, for example, I was just recently in Hawaii on the island of Maui, and you can see how that based on the living situations, if you're a single family homeowner, well, then you're set. If you can get a home charger on an island, it's pretty much you're done. But there are a lot of multi-unit dwellings, a lot of multi-family dwellings that exist on Oahu, on Maui, et cetera. They are going to have access to public charging, and they're going to have to understand how to navigate those options based on power level and dwell time. And so on one hand, you have to educate the public on what their opportunity for charging is and how that fits into their daily life. And then on the other hand, if we're talking about an island, we have to talk about power production and how they can produce the power for those different charging options. And really then allows people to, again, on one hand, educate for how the fueling with electricity will work. But then also, you just got to make sure that we've got the power production available for them. And it's not a one size fits all with respect to geographic locations and lifestyles.
Yeah, because we hear that if you're an apartment renter or something of that nature, there's oftentimes no place for you to plug in your EV. And so we're wondering if you're familiar with any changes to this and if that can alleviate this problem.
Well, I think one thing that the biggest challenge, I think, is if it's an established, development, that you have to go through a lot of hoops to get something updated as it relates to power on site. So there's a lot of red tape that gets in the way of that from a permitting perspective, right? So there are some companies that are developing out, as fast as they can, just unique solutions around, well, what could we do that could not have to be as, painstaking as it relates to going through those hurdles, but also still give people access to charging. So there are options for level 1 charging, for example, at multi-unit dwellings, which doesn't require power upgrades as much as you might if you want to do a bank of level 2 chargers. A level 1 charger is just like a 110 outlet, and it can give you about 40 to 50 miles of range per night. And that can be accessed quite easily. But then you also have to contend with who's using the electricity, where's the power going, who's paying for it. So you still have to have some network capability around monitoring those charging sessions, even if it is a low-powered session. So there's a lot of different approaches that are being taken to address these needs for multi-unit dwellings. I think that the biggest detail coming into play is for all the buildings that are out there, we have to address and adapt. We also need to be talking about new permitting and new infrastructure and new construction around what can we do to plan in advance for this type of opportunity so that even if we don't put the chargers in, we can still route all the conduit for for the parking inside of these units. So that if someone wants to access it, they can. So these are a lot of things from a policy perspective that has to be laid out, as well as what happens with final construction. So again, we're at the beginning of a lot of how do we adapt where we've been for construction, and also where do we go to future-proof what's going to happen with construction, and all that's on the table.
We also learned that Hawaii Electric has fewer than 20 level 3 fast chargers on Oahu. And I've experienced this. The majority of them are broken. They don't accept payment. They don't connect to newer EV software. So, Matt, help. What's being done to fix this?
So I was on Oahu about 4 years ago. And at the time, they only had a handful of fast chargers. And in the world of ChargeWay, again, we reference fast charging levels, not just as level 3, but levels 3 through 7. Because if you call every fast charger level 3, people think it's the same every time, but it might be a 2-hour charge or it might be a 15-minute charge. So that's one thing we always think is important to note. And we're seeing higher powered stations roll out on Oahu. For example, Tesla has finally put in some superchargers on the island, for example. Those are level 7 chargers for Tesla owners on the island. So we are seeing that be built out. But as for non-Tesla charging station locations, what networks are on those islands, there's only a handful. But they are rolling out more charging as we're seeing it. So, for example, in Maui, where I was just recently at, they have their first level 6 charger right in the heart of the island, and there's 4 of them side by side. So we are seeing higher powered chargers roll out on those islands. It just will take some more time, as I mentioned earlier, as it relates to it's chicken and egg. Often we hear that that reference, but what is actually happening for the use cases of EV drivers on each of those islands? And I think that the low hanging fruit opportunity is to try to say, well, if you are going to be living on the island, we can really adapt level 2 options more quickly and fast for homeowners and renters. What does that look like? Because of the geographic setting, I think it makes a lot of sense. But if you're a renter of an EV and you're visiting Oahu, you're visiting Maui, you do want to know you can fill it fast. If you got to get that rental car back to the renter. So that's the thing that we need to be thinking about as to what's the volume of EVs on each of those islands and how does it relate back to that infrastructure.
Matt, what about here in the 48 states where you might be living in a state or passing through a rural state where there are farms and big tracts of land where maybe you want to get an EV charge, you're running out of juice and there's no place to charge. There's got to be states where there's maybe less EV adoption going on and it's not as important for them to jump on the EV bandwagon. What's going on to help make sure that you can get a charge no matter where you live in the United States?
I think that's a good example. So for example, my mother lives in Montana. And so she's in Big Sky country and she's got a lot of land. And my thought every time I talk to her about it is, well, you come back to the house, the ranch every night. And the beauty of it is that means you've got a fueling station at your home every night with a level 2 charger. I think that is one thing that is part of that consumer psychology hurdle that's still out there, is that people that live in rural areas, they perceive how they fill up, which is what they've known. I've got to go find a gas station. But it really relates back to what is their driving use case on a daily basis. And so if they are on their own land or driving around in rural areas, if they're driving anywhere between 200 and 300 miles a day, which may be the case, they still have the option to go home every night and fill up. And so that's a big part of understanding the use case of both the geography and the lifestyle. But with regard to the NEVI dollars that are being spent, that's a big part of identifying those interstate corridors for where we can also make sure that every 50 miles, we do have at least 4 level 6 fast chargers available, even in states like Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota. That's part of what's rolling out right now. So it's really, again, about helping people understand how an EV fits into their lifestyle. And again, based on where they geographically are, we're human. We want to see what we can trust. So if you're driving on the highway and you see a sign in the air that's 100 feet high that has a yellow shell or an orange ball with a 76 in it, you go, cool, I'm safe. But if you don't see that when it relates to electric fuel, you're not going to trust the car that runs on electric fuel unless you understand how to use it in your lifestyle. So I think that's a big part of the conversation. So I just always tell my mom is, Mom, you can fill up every night at home on a level 2. So it's there. We're just getting to the place where we're having better and bigger conversations with people that have different geographic lifestyles.
Such a good analogy. We're going to get into politics, if that's okay, if you're ready. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay. Current political climate, how is that really going to affect the future of EVs in America? It seems like the outcome of the presidential election could mean the difference between stepping forward, right, to a greener future or taking a step back to fossil fuels. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, frankly, you can't avoid politics right now if you're in the United States on any topic, it seems. As it relates to the election, I think I mean, the most interesting aspect of this is if you rewind 10 years, what was leading the conversation? It was California, it was Tesla, it was Musk, it was the Democrats, and it really helped push forward on both policy and bolstering EV advancement, whether that was related to vehicle production or whether that was related to infrastructure. And in that 10 years of time, we've gotten a lot done. But as it's pivoting now, you have someone like Musk who has effectively transitioned his ideological positions around what he wants to talk about. And he effectively has alienated a lot of the people that have been big fans of both Tesla and him. And in turn, the political angle on that is, a lot of what happened, what we saw in California is they started going after Musk because of things like he's a billionaire and et cetera, et cetera. So again, he's human. He took that personally and he moved his company headquarters to Texas. And now he's saying he's backing Trump and go down the list of what that looks like. Realistically speaking, I think that no matter what happens politically here in the United States, the globe is moving forward. Last month or last quarter, I believe, is China's vehicle sales, over half were plug-in cars. That's China. And they are selling around 25 to 30 million new cars, new cars a year right now. That's double what we're doing here in the States. So we can't, even if we have these political differences around what we think may or may not be the case around ideologically what we might agree upon or not agree upon, the truth is the technology is happening and industry is moving forward outside of the US. So we have to be very mindful about the fact that we have the opportunity to be a part of that transition for both energy and infrastructure, production, jobs, you name it. And I think whoever leads on that politically is going to prove that in the long term, people will be proud that they did.
Yep. And doing the podcast, we're constantly seeing new, exciting, amazing technology that's coming out. There's new stuff coming out every month, if not every day now. And so we're wondering from your perspective, what are some game changers that are coming that we would want to know about that really might change the future for EVs?
I think moving forward, what I still think, coming down the pipeline is going to be how we see advancements in battery technology and the battery chemistries within the tech. And I think that we've heard promises of solid state, and I always refer to it as the promise of solid state batteries. But I think that as we see more and more announcements are coming out, Samsung had an announcement recently about a 600-mile range, potential battery pack. How fast these come to market is the catch, though. Is how fast can those be commercialized? On top of that, I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation start really happening from legacy automakers and newcomers. I think the announcement with Volkswagen and Rivian and their partnership for $5 billion to share both, manufacturing, prowess from Volkswagen's perspective and software prowess from Rivian's perspective. I think we will see more of that happen. And I think the blending of that will actually benefit the industry overall, because the newcomers that we look at, like Tesla, Lucid, and Rivian, that are really shining with respect to being startups, and Tesla not so much anymore, they're very established, but Rivian and Lucid are catching up. I think what we're going to see is those brain trusts around what they do well, which is software and connected vehicle design, is going to really benefit legacies. But legacies, they know how to produce cars at volume well. And so those are things that you don't necessarily know if you're in the realm of software all the time. So I believe that we will see more of that, and I think it will benefit the industry overall. I don't want to see EV startups go the way of the dodo. Seeing companies like Fisker and others that have struggled, even on the infrastructure side too, FreeWire, on the charging side. We don't need that right now. I think consolidation would be better than bankruptcy, but we just got to see how it all plays out. But I think that's going to be a big piece of that, aside from what's happening on the tech itself.
Well, Matt, we always appreciate your insights. You're just our EV and EV charging smarty pants, and we love chatting with you and learning so much.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with you guys about it. Always available. And of course, anytime we get a chance to talk about ChargeWay and how it helps people navigate the world of electric vehicle charging through our app, I mean, that's a plus for us.
Well, speaking of ChargeWay, where can people find you and learn more about electric fuel and making charging easy as 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, definitely. So ChargeWay is you can download it for both iOS and Android. We're at the App Store and a Google Play Store. And once you download it, you can add it as your EV that you drive today or EVs you're shopping for, as many EVs as you want. It's a really good tool to help you learn about how EVs work. The automated trip planners in there makes it real simple. But also with that, if you want to find us, you can find us on social media. It's ChargeWay at every social media channel: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it. And I still call it Twitter. I can't call it X. I'm sorry. And also chargeway.net. If you want to just get in touch with our team, go to our website. You can do that, or directly through the app. Click your account screen, click contact us, and we're there to chat.
All right, thanks. And before we let you go, we do have a few more questions. We want to take the voltage up to an alarming degree as we switch to a segment that we like to call Keeping It Current. It's a new thing we're doing.
Yes, this is all about the social media comments and questions we get, and we'd like to throw some of those at you if we could. Yes, Matt, we get some colorful comments sometimes on our social media pages, and we like to put them to our interview guests. This is very tricky of us, I know. Here's a comment from John Madden. No, not the football coach. This John Madden comments, take a trip across the country in your electric car. It takes me 53 seconds to fill my 1996 Honda Accord from empty. How long does it take to fill your electric car?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, yeah, I'd love to know exactly what is the flow rate of the fueling stations he's using. So, I mean, yeah, my response to that is, so I've road tripped I've got an electric car. I've driven it from Portland, Oregon to Chicago. And every time I stopped, the average charge time I had at each stop I had was about 15 minutes. So I'm going to be transparent and say it wasn't 53 seconds. At the same time, I'm going to say, I don't think it was 53 seconds for you each time, but it was probably close to 5 minutes or so, maybe 10. But at the same time, too, I mean, that's the critique is there of saying, look, I don't have to stop that long. I get it. At the same time, too, my response is the car that you're driving, what else goes along with your ownership experience of that car? So I understand time is money and people want to save time, but also, too, depending on if you're road tripping every day across the country, hey, man, I get it. I get it. If you're road tripping a handful of times a year or once a year, the benefits you have from owning AV, aside from the time you save on a road trip, it really starts to weigh more heavily into an EV because of the fact that you're not having to do near as much maintenance. And if you are a homeowner, you are charging overnight for a quarter the price of the fill up at a gas station to drive the same distance locally. So it's about, answering the questions. I'm not going to pretend that EVs can fill up as fast as a gas car on a road trip right now, but there are other benefits about EV ownership that do outweigh in the long term. Yeah, I mean, that's like a turducken type fueling comment, like.
Yep, maybe he's got one of those NASCAR things that just goes foomp.
Yeah, speaking of NASCAR, Don Hutton writes to us and says, I drove a green car for 2 years. It was a 1970 Jeep CGS, and I sure did love that color. And Philip Siborowski, hope I didn't butcher that, asks, I would like to know about all these EVs that are on the roads right now, and they want to replace gas vehicles, right? What happens to our roads?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm assuming what he's getting at is where the tax dollars coming from to make sure we have road maintenance. Number two, also there's the speculation around the weight of EVs and the role they can play on roads. For example, vehicles like the Hummer EV are effectively a tank. I mean, those are a little bit excessive, but I think for light duty EVs, again, they're equivalent to gas powered vehicles in that respect for weight. I think with regard to the tax element and what it takes to maintain our roads and infrastructure, as EV owners, I mean, and I'm one of the early adopters, we have to appreciate the fact that, yeah, we are not spending on those tax dollars at the gas station the ways we have in the past. I think that we then have to balance out how do we then help EV owners take part in that contribution in a way that is not feeling big brotherish. Like, is it a dongle that you put into your car, or what is it looking like? Is it that you're tracking your mileage every year and when you register, then that you can pay a certain amount then? I think that hits a little bit hard, though, because it's not part of your weekly fill up. It's like this big chunk of money every 1 or 2 years. So we just got to figure out the right mechanism by which we can help EV owners pay their part of owning EVs, but also using public roads. And I think that over time we'll find the right method by which to do that. I'm not a big fan of the one chunk at one moment because I think it kind of pains you. We got to come up with some fun mechanisms around how we can do that in a way that people feel like it's not breaking the bank all the time. So. But it's a fair question.
Philip sounds very angry.
I told you, colorful.
Well, I think that, what we're seeing is the fact that, again, change is hard, one thing. But I think what the EV industry has done in the last 10 to 20 years that it really leaned on for messaging is that a lot of EV advocates went out of their way to say that electric cars were different and saying that they were different for the reasons that they also felt were the benefits that they valued, which were things that were environmentally focused and things of that nature, which are very real. However, it also alienates immediately American car culture and people that have been very in love with cars for a century. And if you think about what EVs really do change about the ownership experience for cars, is there's a lot of people who look at a car and say, yeah, but my five senses respond to a car. I can hear it when I turn it on. It's got rumble. I can feel it when I'm in the car. It's got rumble. I can smell it. I can smell the gas. Or if I pop the hood, I can see the chrome under the hood. These are all very real things that people have attached themselves to for ownership of vehicles over time that EVs, in many ways, that is removed. But then there's those pluses of what EVs do bring to the table for performance and ease of maintenance and things of that nature. And I just think that the effort made by many EV advocates over time, they kind of painted themselves into a corner that didn't allow them to have a more open conversation with what the benefits of EVs were. And my take on that is, look, EVs are just cars. They are just cars. They have a different fuel that they use, but they also have a lot of benefits that come with it. And we should be thoughtful around that.
Okay, Matt, a couple more comments for you. Gary Marshall Francis says, "We the sane do not want electric cars. That is all, period." Okay, and Bruce Kinzinger comments, "These posts attract haters, but life is harder when you don't wake up with a full charge every morning."
That is so true.
Matt, thank you for playing along with us. We hope we get to see you very soon.
Oh, man. I mean, yeah, again, it's not a G-rated podcast. I could go for that, too. Yeah.
Do you think we could have Matt on the podcast again every day?
Every day.
Regular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that guy.